Watch everything. To our final PTO meeting of the year. My name is Stacey. I'm your school principal and community principal. And we have people from all over the place. I'm going to turn this over. Actually, I'm going to turn this over to our phenomenal PTO president to launch our meeting. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm the PTO president. On behalf of the Clearfield Community, thank you all for being here tonight. We are grateful to welcome APS leadership, community partners, neighbors, staff, administrators, and parents. Your presence here tonight reflects the strong support and deep commitment this community has for our school and for our students. Thank you as well to everyone who took the time to submit questions ahead of tonight's meeting. Your engagement and involvement are truly appreciated. We would also like to recognize and thank our board member, Jennifer McDonald, Dr. Bradshaw, the Green Superintendent for APS, Operations, Trade Capital Projects, and Council Member Counselor. And I'll hand it over to Jim. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jennifer McDonald, for those of you I have not met. First and foremost, APS Months 2012, Aaron and I have boys graduated from North Atlanta, the only high school that this last fall or last spring, whatever. It's May, I was another meeting on your calendars. Our boys from Georgia, so we've had a great experience in this district, and I'm a community, right? So First of all, I appreciate every single person that's here, because every one of you, whether you're a neighbor or a parent, or you were supposed to be at foundation or meetings, you had to change your plans because I knew how important it was to have a state express, very accommodating, try to find a slot, make a slot. They don't make it for a reason. And then for me to ask the gentleman to come and join us, we have 15 high school graduations. So I am incredibly grateful. We are going to keep this to, we have a hard stop at 7 p.m. Thank you, Brooke, for PTO security and for doing childcare for us. The statement of the meeting is really, we wanted to hear what the community had to say, right? We have some very big decisions to make about the future. We had been leaning about it. We are getting some data back on cost and investment. What does that look like? We've had some parents, community members ask questions about what are the other options. And so I appreciate Brooke putting together the opportunity for you all to ask questions. We had over 48 questions. I think some had 48 questions in the questions. So there is a lot of great thoughtful input. So right? Because you don't spend time, we have no idea what you think, and it's very important that we work as a unit. Because the community is right the audience in the district. So we invited council member Worthy. I was just telling Thomas at the time, I'm just practicing this very formal time. We want solidarity with the city. Thomas has been doing some great things about traffic, and there's challenges around these schools, and so thank you for coming and being supportive of what we're doing. Dr. Dancer, Dr. Drake, Dr. Dancer, Dr. Bradshaw, and Dan Drake, they put together some information to try to be response to as many of your questions as possible. We know we won't get to that, but there's also going to be a little reserved time at the end for some Q&A. We're going to get through, but most importantly, there is no decision being shared tonight, and there's no decision being made tonight. This is really for you to speak us. We are grateful that you are here. Dr. Bradshaw, I'm going to hand you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure and privilege to be out here to share with you our plans for Sarah Smith. I don't know if you'll be my clicker or something. Matter of fact, put them all down for the first one. All right. First and foremost, what is my role? My name is Ken Bradshaw. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of Operation Efficiency. Maybe I shouldn't have clicked the slide everyone's reading. Go back up. Just kidding. I'm going to cover everything on the slide, but I want to share. I have 6 different departments, starting with finance, IT, school safety, HR, facilities, and athletics. Why did I share that with you? Because all of these departments intersect with the work we do. So I have a bird's eye view of all the different projects that we have throughout the district. In saying that, about 6 months ago, the board approved APS Forward 2040, in which Sarah Smith was a part of that approval. So let me be clear why we're here, because we don't have an agenda. Let me state that again. We're here to share information so that you'll see exactly what we before we make a decision. That's it. And we're going to try to be as transparent as possible. We received all 49 questions, and we're going to try to package and answer within the PowerPoint. But if we're not as thorough, we will take time at the end to cover some of those questions. I say all that because APS 2040, we had a goal in mind. The superintendent, the Board of Education, the goal of APS 2040 was to bring more academic programs to Atlanta Public Schools. That's number one. Number two, to consolidate the school district where there were opportunities, to consolidate. And we believe Sarah Smith came up because it was a dual campus, and that was one of the opportunities. And number three, I think you pay our salaries to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, right? We're very clear who pays our salary. You do, with your tax dollars. So I'm not the most transparent person you're going to meet because we don't have an agenda. We just want to share the information. We have presented to the GO team on one occasion, and we're here with that presentation, but we slightly modified that presentation because there were several questions that came up during the GO team meeting. And saying that, The goal is whichever campus we select, whether it's the primary or the intermediate, the goal is to have a state-of-the-art campus. And we agree on that. A state-of-the-art campus on whichever campus we decide. So the kids will receive a quality education in the best building. With that being said, the board did approve APS 2040. So why are we here tonight if they approve the primary campus as being the campus for the new construction? After that approval, because we're good stewards of taxpayer dollars, there was an opportunity for possible acquisition of the land adjacent to this property. That's it. That's it. There was opportunity that, hey, why don't you guys, have you ever considered that? We did some research and that people who held this position previously, they had the opportunity, but the district, for whatever reason, and that's not being done enough. Now we have that opportunity again after APS 2040 was approved. That made us come back and said, let's at least present that information to this community, to the stakeholders, because if you found out that there was an opportunity and we did not bring that to you all, and then we're financial implications, we're supposed to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, then you will hold us accountable. So we're simply bringing that information to you. Also with that, we know that whichever campus, we selected a 900 to 1,000 seat schools. So whether it's the EC campus, whether it's the IC campus, the school, and I've shared with Dr. Jennifer a few minutes ago, we're going to make it right at the top. Right at the top. Now, I've been a high school principal in the elementary principal, I had the schools that I managed. To be honest, it's very, very well run machine. Actually, they fall the two the more efficient, but our school, you get all the grant. You get every, what we've done specials that you can if you do a good job of scheduling. So we're not afraid of having, FTE school. Thirdly, what is shift its sense? And again, that's the possibility of the acquisition of this land. And the reason we want to thank the principal, you all have this board meeting, we made a phone call to the investors or the developers, and they were kind of simple. We're going to give you about 60 days before we move forward. They're ready to move forward because they have other people with interest in their property. And I've been very transparent. So one time of the essence, so we said before we make a decision, because it's not going to be a singular decision, we said, well, let's bring the information to the stakeholders so that you can see. Next slide.
Considerations.
And what we're just planning for you right now would be, I don't even want to call it pros and cons of EC and IC, because we get into pros and cons, that can become a debate. So we're just going to say considerations the educators must consider, and that's whether it's at either campus. Number one, you got to look at the FCA score, facilities condition assessment, which every building has. Now, it's all depends. So we take a look at that for design option. It's occupancy. So that's 300 or 400 on this campus, and a brand new rebuild on the other campus. Financial implications of rebuild versus an addition, there will be a cost difference. The layout, size, available land, if that becomes available and we can purchase it, then that's something we're gonna bring back to you. Or the narrow footprint that's currently on the EC campus. If you have kids who attended the EC campus, you know that campus very well. So here's EC. I'm saying elementary campus. I'm sorry, I got my link on. I've been trying for you, primary campus. Okay, the topography, the safety concerns, the traffic, whether it's at either side, whether law enforcement will be to help with road crossings and dismissals, transportation, carpool access, all of these things you deal with every day. Walkers, making sure that we have safe walk zones for our students. Teacher staff parking, make sure that teachers, while we want them to get exercise, parking at different various locations, it being kind of stretched on rainy days for teachers, the staff to walk. Outdoor play space, we understand that that's a major consideration, as well as the impact on student, staff, families during the construction. The reality is, if we build at this site, then we can actually complete an addition without disrupting either campus versus if we look at the PC. In which setting, PC campus, then that will require either swing space or just a phased approach to make sure it's built to standard. Community input, that's over here. I should Dr. Dancer, even in preparing this presentation, I said, let's try as far as we can, even if we present both renderings of the property, someone's gonna think, well, you have a preference. No, you have a preference. Based on the dollar amount, based on everything we see, and we're gonna make a decision based on the time. The time sensitive situation with the acquisition of that property involved. Available swing space, whether there's another campus where we can swing the PC to while it's being constructed. The impact on ongoing projects in the area, and I know sometimes look at the PC campus or whether we combine it, but you all are part of a bigger pattern. So the dollars that's set aside for this project, just like you will have a child matriculate for what? The middle and the high school, and the dollars are the dollars. Right? It's one set of dollars that we have to look at all these sets of projects. And last but not least, requires change to approve. Again, before I turn it over to Dr. Dancer, APS has approved the PC campus. We are keenly aware of it. We're here to say there is new information that came after the approval. We're going to share that information with you. We have some backgrounds. We know there will be a lot of questions, but to go today is not a decision-making meeting. It's an informational meeting. I repeat, it's an informational meeting. Now, the decision will have to be made or maybe not based on whether we pursue that property. Then we're back to that decision to make. However, I will say this to you. Because this is an APS forward 2040 plan. I repeat, 2040, that means whatever decision is made within the next 60 days, nothing will happen within the next year, maybe 2 years. And that's being totally honest with you, because we still have to wait to see if P-SPOSH passes. We have other SPOSH priorities. So this could be, regardless of which plan is approved, a 2027 SPOSH project or a 2032 SPOSH project, or based on the dollar amount, or I think we're not going to go that far, right? But it could be based on the dollar amount. But I will say, and I know we're here tonight, this is not a plan that we are going to make a decision where something will happen within the next year or two. We're just giving you the long range plan. Okay? With that, we're going to turn it over to Adam Dancer. He's going to get into the real details of each site. Okay? Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. Bradshaw. So my name is Adam Dancer, again, I'm the superintendent of operations. So that covers the areas of facilities, nutrition, transportation, as well as student assignment. And so I'm coming back to you with similar slides. I see some similar faces, familiar faces from our Go team. And I'm a former teacher, principal in this district. And so hopefully through this presentation, we address many of the questions that came up. And if we don't, it's not because we're not trying to address them. It's just we want to cover as much as we can, and hopefully we touch on a lot of these points. And there's information since the last Go team meeting as well, because we definitely heard some of the things that came out of that. And so if you have watched that and you were wondering if we were bringing anything new, we don't. I do want to start here though. So what has changed since the fall? So I want to be very clear with everyone because it did come up with questions. We are not considering any addition here at intermediate without land acquisition. And I want to be clear on that. So back in October, Dan Drake over there, I think he even met with you all. We had another community meeting that night. And we spoke about something like even on our existing parcel without additional land, the potential of expanding play space on the roof. And I know that wasn't a favorite thing by many. I want to be clear, we're not talking about that. Okay, so we're not here talking about any extension of this property without land next to it. Okay, so just want to start there. So that was when we look at both sites. So a couple of things on here. The one thing might stand out to you very quickly is this dotted line that says parcel acquisition. We haven't acquired any parcel. That's potential. Something that came out of our OT meeting was about the availability of this land next to the old Ivy campus. So I just want to point that out. So as you can see, this first number is the acreage of the existing, our current property, which is 4 acres as the primary. If we were to acquire a parcel next door, that would add about 0.7 acres for a total of 11 acres. On this particular property, you can see touch on that parcel here in a little bit more in depth. So you can see it's kind of long and narrow, especially in certain points. When we look at this site, when we look at the building that's on it currently, we see that the approach is new construction. We did feasibility studies in the fall, and that was the new construction for that particular building. Again, these are estimated numbers that certainly can shift as numbers change and the cost of construction was about just under 77. That would be for a 900-seat elementary. Although, as we said, if we look at projections, which we'll look at the end here, actually, we're looking more at 1,000 seats, so you can see that number going up. But the cost differences that I'm talking about here, they would go up pretty equally in both situations. Well, let's look at the intermediate campus. So again, this is our current footprint here. And this is the potential parcel acquisition. We're in a good spot right here behind us. 6.7 acres currently on our current property, with the addition of about 3.2 bringing us 10 acres. So the Somerset primary campus would be about an acre bigger if we acquired the land in those circumstances. The projected cost of that, and might be my copy, it was 38 million, about $39 million. And that would be in addition to this campus here, as well as the extension of some of the core space that we're in right now. This is a core space that would have to become a little bit bigger to fit the additional students that would be in the building. So when we look at the difference we're talking about between the two, close, it's under $38 million. And again, those are based on feasibility studies from late fall, early winter. And that's one of the things that is bringing us back here that Dr. Bradshaw mentioned. Back in the fall, we touched on what if. Now we're at a place where we have a potential opportunity to get it. It's not a what if, there's a strong possibility we could get the land. So the question comes back to what makes more sense. Want to go to the Southsmith primary. These were drawn new from what I presented in Go Team last month or whatever that was. Again, the 4-inch, you're looking at the primary campus. It's the current structure of Old Ivy right here. The carpool that's currently the solar system. That's kind of the way to do it. The bus lane would be here, but what you're looking at here is a new build, 3-story building. This is a 3-story rendering. And you can see it is long and it is high because of the nature of the lot. The current place, the play field, the kickball field, softball field, whatever is in the back there, that would be parking. Okay, with play space, work towards trying to maximize play space, rendering here in a second. What you see. And then of course the bus loop. So this is the same exact look, just a little bit different. So you're talking proposed building, play space, parking. And this does not include that parcel I just touched on. So I'm going to touch on that here in a second. Although that parcel doesn't provide too much for us to be able to build more, it does solve one particular issue, and that's kind of that hinge that you feel about tight. So I'm going to show you here in a second. Okay, so this is 362 Old Ivy, so it's our primary campus. Extension, this is 360, but so it is cut out. You can see the parcel here. The purple is our property. That orange area is the parcel next door. You can also see it here closer. This is a watershed picture to show where, when we talk about water and where the water would have to go, it have to be diverted backwards towards, I guess, the Blue Heron area, because you do have homes all on this side that are existing. So that is about 0.7 acres. So as we did earlier, it's not about which, I'm going to point out just considerations, not pros and cons. This is less than an acre, about 0.7 acres, as I mentioned. It does reduce pinch point between building and property lines, for sure. If you could widen kind of where the road is, potential path, I think that is an important part of the future in that particular area. There is steep and gentle grades that require retaining. Again, it's not similar to what we see here as well, just because of the topography. It's a wooded site, so that requires a lot in which you have to take down and treat compensants and all of that. We have the same thing, obviously, back here as well. So there's similarities in some of this. Proximity to single family homes. Because there are homes on that east side of the property line that we would guide, and then stormwater strategy. Again, making sure that the stormwater wasn't running into the yards of the neighbors. So this was so we have looked into this. That was brought up as a way in which we could potentially expand our footprint there. So there are some, considerations to take into account there. Intermediate. So this is again with the added lot. The added lot is going to highlight it again. New information is this, because this was not this more of a reality than it was before, which is really why we went with the primary recommendation at that point, instead of having the two options more outwardly spoken about. So let me go to here. So this is we're in a great spot. Because that one right there, right there. Okay, that's this. Just to get us. So the lot we're talking about is on the other side of this. And what you see here is a feasibility rendering from the fall. Right? We're going to have something newer here in a second, but I want to level set everybody. What you can see here and here is Guadalupe. The ability to have, again, an entryway and a drop-off point for students on kind of the lower side, and obviously topography is a reality here. And then the existing driveway into our. Gonna go to this one. Same concept, just a different look. So at that point, the rendering was about how you can create play space over this area, as well as parking and room for an addition, a two-story addition, that would take place over there. One of the things that's important to recognize is even though when you're talking of a new build versus an addition, we have a building that's in good shape. It doesn't mean we want to touch anything in here. Like I mentioned, expanding floor spaces would be a part of it, but you're not building instructional units for 1,000 students. You already have 650. It's got 650 capacity. So you're just having the capacity to get to that 1,000. So that is one of the places that's a cost saver. If you're talking about the two. Now I'm going to go, so at that point, I'm going to show you this chart just as a, to bring us back, and then the next slide, there's gonna be some new information in terms of some new renderings that are more recent. What I showed back then was just a comparison of those costs, just so people could see a breakdown, and that's what I'm referring to, construction costs. The difference there is that we're adding less of a building, on an addition. So when you talk about construction costs, that's one of the things. Architectural fees versus the full build, we're talking about we're designing a new building at another site. Contingency, price fixtures, furniture and equipment, other, I'll defer to Dan, what is other, Dan? All the other stuff, moving costs, there's a lot of different things that are involved here. Land acquisition, these are not specific numbers, like if I could write a check now and get either of these, this is our, best estimate on particular costs for the land acquisition. It could be higher, it could be lower, I guess, but that's just, again, I wanted to share the information. This was not here the last time, because at that point, we didn't bring that. We brought it back to you after, you all brought it to us in team. So that, we get to that $37 million difference. Again, just sharing the numbers. Could those shifts between, now and whenever this starts? Absolutely, but there seems to be a difference between the two, concepts. Now, one of the things that we definitely heard was, well, can we see more? So I will share this. We leaned into some of the questions that came up in the Go team the last, like, can we see more about the traffic control and carpool and what that could look like specifically here on this campus? We didn't do as much on the primary side, and that wasn't again to take us one way or another. It was that a lot of the questions that came out were about this property and want to see more picture of different rendering. So with the architect, if you came, watch board meetings back in March, we did a update, or the board approved changes to updates to our storage slots. One of the pieces in there was putting in the design for all of these E-slots dependent comprehensive long-range facility plan projects like Sarasville. So we have gone with the architects, and they have designed a few different things here to show you guys. We leaned into them quickly. Sorry, go back to this. So this is a very recent update. I think it hopefully takes into account a lot of what was asked back in April or May. I guess we're in May. I guess we're in April.
It was April.
Again, Waika, current building, existing parking lot. What's different here is kind of spelling out a little bit more about traffic flow. So even with the topography, so we're not negating the flat site. And that's been a big question that we brought up in, what is feasible, what is possible. So what I'm gonna just lead you through. The site summary is very small writing, so I'm gonna read the bullet points. New addition building with corridor connected to the existing building. So one of the things that came up was if we had any type of new building off to the side, then we need to make sure there's a connection for safety and security with the current building. Park, utilize existing parking, parking lot and drop-off areas, that would be this, all right? The bus drop-off, we would move down here. So the bus, while you could come in here, and I'm gonna show you a different picture rendering of where that drop-off would be. Again, kids would come in there, they come up the steps, and they can head wherever you all go in the morning. If it's reporting here or wherever you're processing. Two pairs, so these are play fields. So I want you to not think of them as level. Here is terrace pro. But we're talking about a total of about 1.48 acres of play field. Between, so all of this, so what you see around and down the side here, okay? So even into the area that you see on the additionally, taking the current building that has a very great area, but it's not accessible because you have to go outside to access it. Very unwilling for us to access from the building and a garden space, a play space. Grade for like the upper grade, fifth grade, we might, different things, different projects, again, school specific, we can figure that type of thing out, but over here. Site requires grading of approximately 10, 15 feet of elevation change. There is the ability to do some of that excavated material to help with the leveling of the parking lot and other areas. So you can see again, the whites would be the new build. And I'm going to show you what that would look like here in a second. And then, this doesn't show it so well here, but some of this would be extended too, because you have to make this bigger. When I say this, I mean, like the cafeteria that were in, current. Different view of it. Area. All right, there we go. So what would it look like? Again, dropping off so you can see again, this would be the current property line, that little hump that you see. So terrace area coming in, drop off. And show you a picture of what that would look like. It's not a floor, that would be actually an entryway with like an office, a stairwell, and an elevator. And this would be a 2-story building, basically, with a ground floor entry. And this connector may or may not be up front here. Again, that's the current design. It looks like it's the second floor. I don't think that's the intention. Just like an elevated connector. Just want to point that out because somebody brought that up. Looking at it. So you come on in, this thing again to show you what the instructional units would look like. This is the addition, this existing building. You're adding, this would be first floor, so secondary entrance. So this was that parking lot going back to this. Is the right there? That's going to will be that right there. Come on in, kids come up the steps, get directed to wherever you go in the morning. This would be first floor classrooms, maybe bathrooms, and likely office space, mechanical rooms, storage rooms. This would be the second floor on that side. Again, kind of a mirror of what's below it. So that's that rectangular building. And just the green support spaces, those are like offices. It could be like small pull-outs or whatever it may be. Based on all of the additional property. So, a few things. I don't know if you want to summarize or we'll go through summary. Okay, excellent. Summary first. Okay. So, a few things I want to point out again. Going back to Dr. Bradshaw, that your consolidation was approved in the plan back in December. And at that point, it did highlight primary campus. However, at that particular point, what was different was the approach there. So we would have, both campuses were considered for consolidation at one point. But it became very clear that doing so here, even if it could be done, without the property acquisition was a no. That's why going back to that big X. I want to be clear, that is not what we're talking about. So now there is a clearer path to potentially extend it. So if we think about making a decision what's best for South Smith, for this community, for everybody moving forward, it's taking into consideration now you have two potentially relatively similar stock footprints. Both of which have challenges. I mentioned topography, trees, wooded areas. Certainly, while you could fit this here in the Ivy, although when you add the 900 to 1,000 seat school in that area, it's going to be different no matter what. In both areas, it's going to be a shift. And we have a support back here because we are engaged with the property owners next door, and they have and so they are very fully aware of these conversations. I mentioned there is a path forward, and there are potential cost savings, which to going back to Dr. Bradshaw's point, I think is important, is why we're bringing it out here, because, our decision to make ultimately, me and Dr. Bradshaw and Dan Drake, ultimately, it's what is in the best interest of the community, and of course, Board Member McDonald is going to represent you all there. But there are cost savings that could support other capital projects. So we are in an East Los voting year, Fulton County, in Atlanta Public Schools. So the referendum goes to the ballot in November. And so as we're developing our capital plan, there's a lot in it. It is a lot, it's a large dollar for sure. But there is a large dollar amount of work to do in our district, not just in projects like additions, things like that, but in the infrastructure, the transportation, athletics, safety and security. So all dollars, are certainly important. One thing I wanted to point out is that we have looked at a glance at 5-year projections for Sarah Smith, which is going back to Dr. Bradshaw's point. When we're this information, newer information as well, because we just reran some numbers looking at the projections. So you can see this is not unusual, kind of up and down of numbers, but in 2030-31, you can see a projection of 871. So a not exceed that point, we would be looking at a split. And so that's why we think going to that 1,000 seat makes more sense. One of the things that is not up here as a bullet point, and it's because I forgot to hand it in, is the future of either building. I know that's the big question that the community brought up. So whether it is a build at primary or a build here, what happens to the other? That's a great point. And I'm not here I can't give you an answer to that specific. But what I can say is that we are very active in a way different than ever before in this district. This is my 21st year in APS. I've never seen as much as we're doing with all of our properties as I've seen what we're doing. Trying to engage the community in what the use, the repurposing of the buildings could be. And hopefully you will see some of that, and you've seen some of that already in some of our long vacant buildings, like Capitol View Elementary. But you're going to see some more of that coming up in some of our properties that are recently or might be. We're really actively engaged trying to meet the needs of the community. So you would have a voice at that table too about what the use would be moving forward. So I don't have an answer specifically there, but it is heard and understood that you don't want a building that's just sitting there unused for decades. So we do understand that. So from there, I'll pause. I'm sure there's lots of questions, but I'll hand it on over to you for a second. Thank you.
I'll be very brief. I'm here for two major reasons. Number one, I'm here to reiterate and reemphasize the fact that the city of Atlanta nor myself are getting involved in any relocation. That is not the purview of the city. That is not the purview of your council person. That is the purview of these individuals, because that is the decision that needs to be made in the best interest of the students that attend there. And what I am here to do, the secondary reason I'm here, is to reiterate two things that I think is on the top of your mind, and it's in the purview of the city, and that is safety on both Old Ivy and White. Because let's be honest, there's speeders and there's safety issues on both. They are both very, very dangerous. We get, my office gets a lot of email and correspondence about near misses out here at White and Whittington. I think that that's probably top of mind, but North Ivy has very, very similar problems. What I want to do is give you my public commitment that those are going to be fixed, and that isn't an empty council promise. I am putting my money where my mouth is. For those of you that know my predecessor, I'm happy with him. I call him very thrifty. Or the thrifty show. When I'm mad at him, I call him very cheap. But either way, left this district a lot of money that can be repurposed to issues that matter. I hope you've seen changes and blinking lights and warning signs, and speed humps out here that were delivered almost overnight. That is from the 2022 T-Sloss, which was called Renew. There's a little bit of money left in District 7 account there that, City of Atlanta Finance is begging us to zero out. So when I said, I've heard these concerns, there needs to be a change, let me be very clear, that is temporary. That is temporary, that is not a long-term solution. I've heard from all of you, we know that the biggest behavior change that we've seen on Wayuka has actually been motorcycle police officers with radar guns. That's the only thing that's really changed behavior. That's temporary to get us through the end of the school year. And I'm pleased that we were able to deliver that in less than 2 weeks. And for those of you that know the city of Atlanta, that's pretty. But that gives you now more about that funding goes. That expired 22 T-Slots over new. The 2027 T-Slots expired, the expires next year. That's moving Atlanta forward. They all have, city government. And there's a lot of money left in that pot. And what I'm telling you tonight is that I'm committing to spending District 7, moving Atlanta forward funds on both North Ivy and both Wayuka, because I think what you're hearing tonight is regardless of what y'all decide, where you decide to relocate, there's going to be students on both campuses for at least 5 years. And we have got to keep those students safe. And so what my vision for both Wayuka and North Ivy are the complete streets. And is enough money in our Moving Atlanta Forward fund to make serious progress in both Wayuka and North Ivy. There's not enough money, just to be completely transparent and honest, to complete streets on Wayuka and North Ivy. But there's another opportunity in 2027, the next T-Splosh, just like T-Splosh, if the voters approve it, and I will work diligently to make sure that those two corridors are at the top of the project list, because those two corridors are currently dangerous, currently give you concerns about sending your children to school. And even if a school isn't on one of those right now, it is very, very pedestrian heavy. It is something that we spend every single of our weekends on. I know my family does. Especially with the addition of Path 400. So the big thing at the city of Atlanta, which I found in my whopping 5 months down there, is that everybody will tell you it's fine, and then they only really help you if you have the fun. I want you to know that this community, meaning Sarasota Elementary School, North Buckhead neighborhood, we have the funding to make real changes on Wayuka and on North Ivy. The changes that you've seen delivered pretty immediately are temporary. Do not think they're permanent. I think they're just trying to get us through the school year. And I hope, and it is my goal, that your children's safety on those corridors have no bearing on the impact of the very important decision that y'all are about to make. Y'all need to make decisions based on what's best for the children and not whether or not they can get to school safe. And that is where the city of Atlanta, that is where our job is, that is where I'm committed to. I know city council people aren't supposed to have their favorite neighborhood, but this is my neighborhood. This is where I raised my children. And these are the streets that I walk. So please don't put this on Facebook, but this is my favorite neighborhood. And this is where I'm going to invest the resources that are available to us. So street safety, walking to school, safe routes to school, hopefully that is not a part of the decision that y'all try to make this very, very important decision. Because that is something that I am personally very, very devoted to. And we do have fundings to move, we do have funding available to move the deal. And with that, I'll turn that over to y'all. I'm very excited about being part of a conversation of what I believe you mentioned about whatever campus you decide. it is very important to stay at the table and make it a community asset for all of us. And I know BPS has been very creative in that. I look forward to that discussion, but I know you'll have to make a decision before then. So I'll turn it over to you, people that make the decision.
Thank you, Councilman. We have about 10 minutes left, and, thank you so much for being attendant for the last 50 minutes. I'm curious, we want to kind of hear your thoughts. We just want to listen, take notes. I do want to preface by saying that we do have about 45 more days to reach out to the property owners to let them know what we decide. So that's why we're here in time of essence. But we hope we presented a balanced approach in both sites and not the pros and cons, but the considerations for both sites, financial considerations and everything else that, that leads us to make a good sound decision. We do want to invest in the entire feeder pattern. That's the goal because it will matriculate all the way through. But I'm going to stop right now. We want to be very cognizant of your time and just jot down your thoughts. Last thing I will say is that we will make this PowerPoint available so that you need to digest it more and send emails, and we'll give you an email point of contact so that we can gather that information and still gather all of your thoughts if we don't hear from every individual this evening. Okay, we'll stop right here and
And then obviously we can get emails and we can send it. So if you'll stand there so everyone can hear, that might be helpful. I don't know what I will like this way.
One of the decisions involves some substantial cost savings, allocated to certain things. You hear where that would be? Would it be APS generally, would it be our district, where could that money, that is, would be, say,
Sure. Well, I will share that, over the course of the coming months, there'll be certainly more specific information as we prepare for vote for eSlots about the specific project. But in this particular case, a lot of the eSlots specific projects were outlined in the long range facilities plan that there were a bunch of eSlots dependent ones. This was one, but there were several others. I'll identify, like School of the Arts, renovations in Washington, and new elementary school, and A.D. Williams for the Douglas feeder path. So those are the types of things. But as we do with every eSlot, the money's touched every feeder path. We have transportation, instructional technology, infrastructure, what's happening in Garden Hills right now. And this is a good example of a system replacement and minor renovation. So they would be allocated, and so there's other monies would be going to this area, and it potentially opens up again a prioritization.
Yes, and one of the places where to go is, as we were talking about, this could take, 3 to 5, 7 years. So something that could go even to Sarah Smith primary and some of the renovations to keep that school going for over that period of time.
We'll have it. Not make any commitments. So they're like my, at least advocating for my cluster. So there's some opportunities for some very significant things. I've been advocating for 5 years. And this cluster that other people worked on for 12 years before that. So we're not down the road of like making those big announcements. So there's important community building things that could potentially happen. I'm not saying if you don't do this, we automatically get that. That is something very important that I've worked on for a very long time. We will know more as we kind of work through some of those things, but it is that if we give up, we only take the half price option and we get all the rest of it. That's not how it works. And it can't work that way, especially when we are mindful, we're closing 16 schools in other parts of the district. That is not what my cluster is dealing with, and that is a very heartbreaking situation for a lot of parents, so we do need to be active. Also, I would hear words that I think is important. So that's my job. That's why I feel like to be. And you, your name? Oh, of course, yes. So can you say your question?
I appreciate all of the information. I speak for myself and maybe us that if we could get a better site plan and a more level plan for available at the city, that would be appreciated. I know that you all are taking into consideration everything and not having a preference. And all I'm seeing is more information about build on this campus and not enough information about what preferably that would look like on.
Yes, ma'am. As a matter of fact, after we left the last go team meeting, the go question was, can we get more information about this campus? And we put all efforts on that because the other one has already been approved, right? So, but to your point, you still want to see a rendering that outlines.
Stacy distributed to the parents, and then Davers, Robert, he gave it to you, and said you want to share it, and then Jeff was trying to choice real quickly.
Because on the side of the campus, around where there's truly thought, but if you take the whole thing down, they don't all the building.
Well, there is a phase and approach, and we've done that before in the past, where you might build a wing or area at a time. Challenge, but it can be done. So it will be a phased approach if we cannot find a suitable swing space that's conducive to the parents, because when we swing them to another school, that means parents have to route and pick them up, and that throws a monkey wrench into the picking up and dropping off your students. So that's something we will consider, but there's a phased approach.
So 45 days window for consideration of this other parcel. What coming after this meeting tonight are concrete next steps?
Concrete next step will be, your thoughts. We hope you email us your thoughts. Then we kind of package your thoughts and send correspondence back. If we need to have another meeting, just to kind of give you, our thought process on how we develop the final recommendation, then we can do that. So the next step is to hear what you have to say. We know we can't get it tonight, but we're all rather in writing, be very succinct based on this information. Then we'll kind of let you know if the negotiation doesn't work, then it's a viewpoint. But that would be the logical next.
That's kind of like what PTO did the questions. Let's work together and get something out, and like we're distributed, we'll get it to neighborhood stuff, and have it in the organized way that you all don't feel like it's emailing people that you don't know whether or not. We need everything sent down. I know I get skip. So I'll work with you. We can connect tomorrow. Okay. And then I think gentlemen in the button down. Oh, you're just standing to the left. Yeah. Right. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, I can see class and we're running.
I do just want to say thank you. I was at that guys' meeting. You guys clearly taking feedback and every step through the process. You get, of course. I really do appreciate it. I think the community does as well. When I look at this, I'm looking at the attendance numbers, and by the time the thing is built, it's going to be almost 90%. How do you guys evaluate the irreversible decision of taking PC site off the map with IC, whereas, you know, look, this school's had 1,200 kids before. If you built it as a PC, you would always have to stop there. I still have to do, you know, in these there.
Great question. What we're gonna do is, the goal was to consolidate and unify the campuses. That's the goal. I'm a parent, former parent, I'm still a parent, but I'm former. I'm a young student, and unfortunately, fortunately, I didn't have to do the drive and pick up on my kids, but my wife, was waiting in that car right from me. And I couldn't imagine going twice, just be honest with you, but sometimes you get used to what's happening. You just you get used to. Certainly our goal is to consolidate to make life easier for everyone. The bottom line is whichever campus we decide to build upon, or if the numbers grow exponentially, we want to retain that building. We want to grow. APS wants to grow. But in not growing as quickly as possible, we're trying to be prudent of every dollar that we have. So it's a rock and a hard place to kind of do nothing, stay where you are, or consolidate and monitor the numbers, because we're gonna be all right at 1,000. So that gives us a little room, but you're right at 90%. But the good problem is, if Sarah Smith continues to grow, then if bottom line, we have to reactivate a campus, be a solution down the road, but we'll have a viable reason for the reactivation of that park.
The question about what's gonna happen with campuses, we clearly didn't do that. What I will say is, you approached me about this potential tool that has some interest in getting a campus. We don't do competitive seats, never, ever, ever, ever. So that's my commitment, I just won't do it out of one year. So, I mean, and like, yes, ma'am.
It sounds like this is part of the school, which we prioritize and vote on. Yeah, we have 45 days to get it in, and that means we're changing what we agreed before, and we're going to kind of fitting to the IC. But how does that work in terms of we start buying that land, we have those funds approved, then how does that work when we look at renderings, maybe the cost change, we think of that? Doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of timelines. And then finishing out the plans on, we don't even have to that. Is that feels very rough compared to everything else?
Sure. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, question. A couple of things. The purchasing of the land, we would have the funds to purchase that land prior to the SLOSS 27 fund becoming available. So we do not have to wait for that. So that's number one. So if we get to a point, but that land won't be available forever. So there is some essence of time constraints to make that decision. So if we look at all of the feedback and determine long term, so thinking even beyond 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that this is the better property, or primary is the better property, we do have to make that decision. Similarly with the other parts at the old Ivy. Like, so there is a time element here, because if we were to pursue the other, obviously that less hinged approach would help. But in terms of the longer term capital, there's a lot of moving parts. So in slots, you spend the money as you get it. There are some opportunities to put shovels in the ground sooner rather than later. But as I said, there are many different priorities in the comprehensive plan, so everything can't happen at one time. So I don't know if it answers your question, but we can buy the property now. We don't have to wait till after the vote. That's the either one, whether it's that or the other parcel. But we don't want to do that and then come back and say, well, we're not doing it, because then it's going to be like, well, you bought this land and then you're closing this school. That doesn't feel like funds. So that's where we're at.
But feedback will be really, I mean, obviously all very good here, especially on the bikes. You're moving around Shelby and trying to figure out a date to make it work, so. Give your feedback, right? We weighed all of it. I think everybody wants the same thing, that we want what's best for the kids. First and foremost, kids are priority, and then the families that are attached to it. Yes, you don't think I'm not going to be the only one who does. We have to do what's best for these kids and the families that go to school here, and then we don't want the neighborhood to be negatively impacted, right? So give your feedback. Obviously, prioritize tonight. Thank you for doing so. So we're going to get it on the phone tomorrow morning to come up with something straightforward, so you all can weigh in, and then we're going to give you a brief timeline. Maybe this week I'll give these ratings and graduations, like I said, so, but we'll put a deadline on it for next week. I want to make sure that we're hearing what you have to say, right? Like, I know how important it's in the community now. I used to work now over here, and I can't say it's not going to work, so we're not. So we're gonna all get together. Thank you all for making time to come outside. I really appreciate you. Friends, neighbors, right? Like we have to do the right thing. We just want to make sure that we're doing it so that we're not slowly later going, oh, we should go. I see that it's 2 weeks by property. We're just trying to weigh the pros and cons. And please understand it's not simple. Like we're gonna know the answer tomorrow morning. It's just trying to roll through the process.